Come one, come all, come in general. This is Top Knot Analysis, your favourite YouTube video essayist reviewer talkie man on the YouTube's Redditos, Tumblrinos, and, dare I say it, Tickety Tops. Links in the down there part. So, what's on today's agenda? I'm so glad I asked. I recently finished The Last of Us Part 2 on live stream on the Twitchifications. Needless to say, I have some thoughts, and ironically enough, also some thoughts about how I have no thoughts in some places and more in others, so let me break it down for you in a nice little itemized list. Pros: generally improved gameplay, my only mild gripe being that when you get shot and fall on your back, then you tend to end up taking a little longer to just get up off your booty patootie, so that's nice. Lev I like, however, was also somewhat underdeveloped, especially with how much interest and intrigue was built up with the faction he was from, so that's a little bit unfortunate to say the least. The Rat King was great. I wish there were more boss fights in the game. For better and worse, I do appreciate the boldness within the storytelling to do certain things. That doesn't necessarily make the game good on the whole, but, you know, as a small-time creative who's, you know, still in the stages of dipping the creative kiddie fool fingers in the pool, it's nice to see someone come out with some wild haymakers every now and then, even if they do end up not feeling nice on the teeth. And again, for better and worse, I'd say that half of the side characters are so well written that they even eclipse my interest in the main pro and antagonists, so that certainly is a double-edged sword. And now on to the rest of everything else on my mind about the game as of yet. So, elaborating a bit more on Lev, long story short, the scars were unfortunately underdeveloped, which is a shame because, like, on the surface there is a lot of meat there. Like, we find out little bits and pieces about them, mainly that they're essentially like a religious fundamentalist tribe, and also they communicate with the whistles, which is pretty cool, and also they seem to be largely run by the elders, whoever they be. But also, more to the point, we get quite a lot of interesting, well-drawn-out graffiti propagandations of the Scar's original girl boss Prophet, essentially, and how she was such a big deal. So, I mean, I guess in some ways it's interesting that she's dead and she had, like, a lot of ripple effects throughout the game even though we never see her. I think it would have been pretty cool to see her, you know, it's kind of like a Lady Negan sort of vibe. But even excluding that, I think another interesting thing about Lev that characterises the Scars a little bit more is that, despite being an apostate, which essentially led to him getting, like, fatwa'd all over the place by his ex-comrades, he still clearly holds on to parts of that religion a great deal and generally likes it, despite the bad sides of the elders. And yeah, I think that's pretty true, like, in my experience at least, pretty true to life of some, you know, people having religious experiences, maybe leaving the faith but still wanting to be tied to it in some honorary capacity. So, yeah. But in practice, the Scars were basically just all evil, all the time, with no level of depth, which is a bit of a shame, considering that the whole point of the game is, oh, you're the bad guy who does the bad things to someone, even though you think you're in the right, and then when you play as the bad guy, you realise, oh, you did some things that were in the right, so perspective. And You know, I mean, it would have been a lot more tight and smoothly implemented if the scars didn't exist, which sucks because I like Lev, which is also annoying because I imagine it would have been a lot easier to condense the struggles into just two factions if they were just the two factions in the game. Specifically, one thing I really liked in Abby's playthrough that grabbed me was that, oh, they have a gym and a nursery, and they're basically like a higher tech version of Jackson, essentially. Like, they're just like us for real, on God. And they didn't really do much with that. Like, it would have been interesting to see, oh, well, maybe, you know, Abby's side is doing a whole lot more good than the Jackson people on the surface of it, so perspective, you know, greater good. Maybe killing Abby would have had some sort of cost, and maybe us deciding not to save her, spare her. Also, that's another thing. Abby sparing us all the time made no sense. Except for the one time when it did, and it ended up really infuriating me personally. Specifically, the point where she has a knife to Dina. You know, she's about to get that neck, and in the end of the day, she only spares us and Dina because Lev was there. Which on the one hand sounds good in some ways, but on the other hand, kind of makes her out to not be a good person and only doing the right thing because of optics for Lev. Which, I mean, on the one hand, I like Lev. You know, just have an I like Lev counter in the background, why ever not, you'll see that at the end. And, yeah, like, it's that combined with the whole thing of Abby, initially at least, only caring about Lev and his sister because of Owen. That's a whole other can of worms, is it not? But, staying on track, long story short, Abby, it would have been nice if you did the right thing for good reasons, especially considering the whole point of the game, at least a large portion of it, is that you ain't so bad. And now I'm leaping into Owen. Okay, you're a generically alright guy, you know, no harm, no foul. At the same time, that also kind of summarizes my feelings to Abby, and I suppose I just generally felt kind of indifferent regarding her. Which is insane considering that, you know, she killed the dude what I like doing the accent of all the time. And, you know, Joel was no saint, as they say, as I've heard a million times over from reviewers far more competent than myself. But at the same time, it just kind of felt like, I mean, with half the game, despite half the game being essentially Abby's story, it felt like the developers, or at least the pacers or story makers, were just sort of trying to speedrun you towards sympathy by just hitting a bunch of, of cliche notes, in my humble opinion. You know, like, oh, she had a little doggy, and she went on the patrols with her friends, and oh, she had a love interest, and they went to an aquarium that's very pretty in it, with the coral reefs, and the wheelbarrowifications of the London Eye. But long story short, Abby doesn't do a whole lot of good. I mean, she does good things, but she never really loses or sacrifices in pursuit of goodness, or at least a moment of unconditional good. And I believe the game makers attempted to make us feel like sad for her by her losing things as a result of her actions, by having us, the player, kill most of her mates in the beginning. However, we didn't really care about them. However, we didn't really... Like, I really am stumped at how little I cared about Abby. I mean, I would have been more satisfied with her if I just had searing hate the entire time I was playing with her. But no, this was even to the point that when the affair happened, I was just kind of like, oh, that happened. Don't get me wrong, I feel a little bad for the Pregos lady who insisted on coming onto the front lines with a baby, but... and then when I put it like that, I realise, hang on, she's a bit of a dick for doing that. I mean, at least Dina had the... No, Dina did it as well, didn't she? I mean, to put it quite bluntly, The Last of Us Part 2 was... I mean, even though I, on the whole, enjoyed at least half of the experience, I will also say that it was so mismanaged in some ways that it's become the first fictional property that I have actually considered writing fan fiction for. Specifically, here's a change, which I know there's like the reviewer cardinal sin, you know, don't try to make the piece of media that you wish it was, try to judge it on its own terms. But I do think the game could have benefited from just making Abby more of a saint. Instead of just being one of the top G soldier ladies, maybe she could have been like the Isaac of that group. Maybe she could have been like the main head honcho, managing all the little particulars, making sure that everyone was well fed and that medicine got redistributed amongst the proletariat, you know? I'll save the AU ravings for maybe the Tumblerinos if I feel so inclined later on, but yeah, I just couldn't stop getting that feeling of what if this was different, which is it's a very rare bone to get picked at whenever I'm reviewing something. Like, I usually don't have that thought. I'm generally very good at, like, looking at something, and even if I don't appreciate it entirely, I can still get where they're coming from. But it really does feel like the game doesn't know what it wants you to think outside of sometimes the dude you like does bad things, and sometimes the person you don't like does good things. So, perspective, with nothing else to say about that, which is a bit of a shambles. Also, while I didn't do the stereotypical gamer rage thing of just walking into the Abby boss fight and letting Ellie destroy me, I will say that I did die in the first 5 seconds of my first attempt anyway, without even trying to fail, so, take that how you will. So, to end on a high note though, the synagogue section in Ellie's section really did touch me in a very good way. Link in the description for the Twitch clip in question. I had a very good time. And haters and lovers of the game respectively, feel free to comment your thoughts. I do enjoy being a little spongy sponge, soaking up all of the opinions and seeing what I can pass and what parts I agree with or don't. So yeah, make sure they keep coming and they don't stop coming and they don't stop coming.